Charles Dickens could have easily been talking about our existence these last 2.5 years. When he wrote these timeless words, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Church was already changing before the pandemic, but it certainly has changed as we stand beyond the pandemic. And at the helm of helping to navigate our churches through these turbulent times, it has certainly been visionary pastors, along with faithful church leadership, that found themselves flexing muscles that they quite frankly didn't even know they had. Today, we'll talk about that and more as we engage and welcome to the growth experience none other than my friend and colleague, soon to be Dr. Jarvis A. Ellis, Sr., senior pastor of the Macedonia Baptist Church of Dayton, Ohio. Thank God the doors of the church are open. But the relevant question for us today is, where does the church go from here?
Make a preacher wanna preach. Make a singer wanna sing. Make a deacon wanna pray. Do it all in Jesus' name. Make a preacher wanna preach. Make a singer wanna sing. Make a deacon wanna pray. Do it all in Jesus' name. Make a preacher wanna preach.
Well, hello, First G Nation. Once again, this is the Growth Experience. We welcome you back to our church podcast, and we are so grateful to be at this point of the journey. This is our third episode, and so we're growing up in the game, and so we're excited to be here, and we have our special guest, who is the pastor of the Macedonia Baptist Church of Dayton, Ohio, none other than soon-to-be Dr. Jarvis.
Pray hard, Reverend.
We praying, and it will make the difference, man. I can attest to that. Jarvis A. Ellis Sr. Is with us, and we're so excited about the things that God is doing in his life, how the Lord continues to bless not only the church, but his family. And so we're here to have some dialogue and really discuss pretty much where do we go from here as a church. We know the pandemic has ushered in I often say many obstacles, but also very much so more opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're grateful for that. What I have seen from afar, brother, man, the Lord is doing a great work in your life. And we are brothers in ministry.
Yeah.
And I thank God for the opportunity to get to know you better as we move forward. But also I'm looking at it, man, we're like pandemic cousins in the game as well, because we got called to new churches from the churches we were pastoring already.
Yeah.
And to get called to a new church, which was already established church in the pandemic, I think it's just different. It's a different challenge.
It's a different beast, man. Different beast.
That's what we're here to do. I wanted you to encourage you all to take some time to invite someone to watch this podcast tonight. If you're watching this on Facebook, click the share button. If you're watching this on YouTube, share the link. But this is something you don't want to miss, as pretty much we're going to give you an opportunity tonight to hear what may go on in the pastor study. All right. Pastor study, I just remember when, especially as a young preacher, when you had the opportunity to just be in the room. And, my thing was, Ellis, I'm not going to lie to you, just to be quiet. I was just taught to be quiet and be a sponge and take all of it in.
Be seen, not heard. Right?
Exactly. That's how it was.
Right.
If they asked you something, your response is brief. And certainly it was honoring of who they were in our lives. And so a lot of parishioners don't get an opportunity to hear the perspectives of pastors who are not just pastors, but they're people. And in ministry, just like life, you can't be in it and it not impact you. So looking forward to this, man. We always get started with what I call word count.
Sure.
Word count is, something I got from my mom when I got called to this church, especially during the pandemic. She sent me, I think it was an email that said, son, every word counts, because of where everybody was.
I love that.
People were honing in,
Yeah.
especially on what the preacher had to say. And so she said, you got to be careful what you say, how you say it. Every word counts.
Sure.
And so when you hear a phrase or a word, just let me know what comes to mind. and we'll get started that way.
Okay, this is gonna be fun. First of all, man, thank you for having me.
Most definitely.
To come from Dayton to Louisville, to be in your city, to be in this amazing church. First, y'all know y'all have an amazing pastor.
To God be
and
the
so,
glory.
man, I'm grateful, man. I share your sentiments, admired you from afar.
God bless
and
you,
so
man.
to be maybe an hour or so, maybe a little under 2 hours away from you, man, it's a blessing. So I'm happy to be here, man. This is gonna be fun tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's do it, man.
Okay.
All right. So what comes to mind, Pastor Ellis, when it comes to the cross? The cross.
Wow. Love, grace, forgiveness.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Love, grace, forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. So that's the cross. And just looking at our context, the black church, what comes to mind when you reflect upon the phenomenon we know as the black church?
Wow. The black church is probably one of the most sacred institutions that we have as a people.
Yeah.
When I think of the black church in terms of my genesis, my beginning, it was the black church. I learned public speaking skills.
Yeah.
I learned manners in the black church.
Yeah.
I learned what to do, what not to do, confidence. Education. There were some things you learned in Sunday school.
Yeah.
VBS that you did not. But the black church, I think, for me, has been an extended family.
Yeah.
And so, growing up in church, growing up in Georgia, where I'm from, the deacons were adopted uncles. They were adopted grandfathers.
Yes, sir.
They were not afraid to paddle me. I learned discipline in the black church, certainly.
Yeah.
But I learned a love for people, just gleaning from my pastor, gleaning from my Sunday school teacher. I learned the importance of connection, relationships, and so you eliminate the black church, we're literally taking away some of the value that we have.
Absolutely.
We look across the spectrum, the hospital systems, compassion. We learned that through nursing home visits, riding with deacons,
That's right.
Caring for the sick, man. So the black church for me has been one big giant classroom, and one great textbook. And so I am what I am because of the black church, unapologetically.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I don't know who says it. I've heard it. I think I maybe heard you've said it a couple times. I am unapologetically a Christian.
Yeah.
But I am unashamedly a black,
absolutely.
black church.
Absolutely.
And so that's my mantra, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now you're from Macon, Georgia.
Macon, Georgia, about 50 miles. When people say Macon, Georgia, let me bring you to Macon. Otis Redding. Little Richard, Allman Brothers. But Macon is about 50 miles south of Atlanta.
Okay.
And I was born in Atlanta, but my mother got a job in Macon, Georgia. So we moved to Macon in elementary school. And it's a great place to raise a family, great place. A lot of my friends are there. But Macon, Georgia, the big city of Macon, Georgia.
Yeah, man. And I know you all know how to do some church. I know you.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
There are some giants that I can just spat off. Dr. E. Dewey Smith.
Yes, sir.
His father, Pastor Eddie D. Smith Sr., who I served
Macon as well.
Macon, Georgia. In fact, Macedonia Baptist Church, 600 Eisenhower Parkway, Macon, Georgia, 31204. Served for 50 years. In fact, he retired last year. I went to the retirement celebration, and I went along with about 80 other sons and daughters in the ministry just to simply say thank you. He was, and we've talked about this off camera, he was mega before we understood what mega church was, man.
Absolutely.
And so Dr. Earl White, who just passed a couple of months ago, Macon, Georgia. Dr. Timothy Fleming from Macon, Georgia.
Wow.
Dr. Aaron Jones from Macon, Georgia. Pastor Jacob Parker from Macon, Georgia. Dr. Ronald Terry, who's a legend in National Baptist Convention. His son serves in Dayton, Ohio.
Yes,
Macon.
sir.
So Macon it's a church town. Still is very much so today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let me give you this other word. Tell me what comes to mind. And I believe this is fitting, especially for the times that we're in, and also your experience
Yeah.
through the pandemic,
Okay.
transition. What comes to
Oh
mind?
my.
You know, time
Bro,
is
how much
filled
time with swift
with swift
transition?
transition.
Swift transition.
Yes, sir.
It is the story of my life.
Hmm.
You know this. You've been through the doctoral program, a proud United graduate. I'm trying to get on the other side of that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
One
sir.
of the things that stuck out to me when I was writing my spiritual autobiography was transition.
Transition, yeah.
In every aspect of my life, transition has been a part. And so transitioning through the pandemic has been challenging. There's been no rubric for it. There's no guideline.
Yeah.
It's been rewarding.
Yeah.
But it's also been challenging. There's been
Yeah.
sometimes like, did I make the right decision?
Yeah.
And so transition, I'm still figuring it out, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, man. I'm
Yeah.
still figuring it out. But it's been a good transition.
Yeah.
It's been, this past 2.5 years has been really good for me. It's been great for my family.
Yeah.
It's made me sort of reassess some things. But I think going back to your mom,
Yeah.
in terms of one word, transition has been, it's been challenging.
Bro.
It's been challenging.
That's
It's been
real
challenging.
talk.
Yeah, it's been challenging.
Because, it has been my joy.
Yeah.
I have become more appreciative
Okay.
of other pastors and their ministries
Yeah.
during this pandemic. And, I think we became more visible
Yes.
during this pandemic. And so I got a chance to really hone in on other names,
Sure.
Other ministries.
Yeah.
And, it's been a joy to see you from afar and how God continues to bless you, your ministry in Macedonia, and what God is allowing to take place there. But as I was reflecting, to your point,
Yeah.
on transition, now it's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. But I was reflecting on this in my quiet time.
Yeah.
I thank God that we are growing,
Yeah.
but Lord knows it's been grueling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
It's been good to see things develop, but
Sure.
it's still been at times very daunting, and it's almost like you understand
Yeah.
where Jeremiah says, you know what, you've
Yeah.
made a fool of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm standing for you, and I'm tried on
Yeah.
every hand,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he gets to the point where he's like, I don't even
No.
want to do it anymore.
No.
And I think that's the side that people don't get to see, because we get to, we see people's uploads, and it really is
Oh, man.
a highlight reel
Oh, man.
of the good things that they have
Yeah.
encountered and
Yeah.
experienced and endured in ministry, but we rarely get the opportunity to hear open,
Oh, my
transparent
goodness.
dialogue
Yeah.
about the ebbs and flows of not just ministry, but life that impacts the pastor.
When that light goes off, when that iPad stops, when
Yeah.
the camera stops, when the media team stops,
Yeah.
no one gets to see how things really are. And I think
Yeah.
during the pandemic, we saw things for how they really were. I
Yeah.
mean, every state had a shutdown order.
Mm-hmm.
And, until the president sort of deemed us as mandatory now or essential, the church has always been essential.
Absolutely.
But on a Sunday morning or maybe during the week, we're going to the church, COVID mask. I mean, making sure that church and ministry goes out. And for the first time, for many of our ministries across the world, sometimes we were probably the most well-versed in technology, and that says a lot. We went to school for seminary,
That's
right?
right. That's
So
right.
we're learning how to exegete.
Yeah.
No one tells us about editing and production and uploads and
Yeah.
what program to do this and what do you do if you run into a snag. And so we're having to
right.
figure it out. And in the midst of be everything to all people and figure out how do you minister to people who are literally in despair.
Yeah.
And so during the pandemic, you're right. Everyone had a worldwide ministry.
Yeah, man.
Everyone had Zoom. Everyone
Yeah.
had, but I think the transition did something to us. I think it depleted us. We were drained. We were working probably harder than we've ever worked.
Yeah.
Not to say clergy doesn't work, but I think
Yeah.
also,
The needs were greater.
oh my
The
goodness,
needs were so
Oh
much
my
greater. We
goodness, man.
weren't chilling, man. It was, and I
No
think
off day.
no off day. We were just as essential, and I would say it, not taken away from any other field,
Right.
but just as essential as anyone that was on the front lines
Oh my
of this
goodness.
pandemic.
Right.
And I think the appreciation
Yeah.
of the church grew leaps and bounds because people needed to be encouraged.
Man.
People are like, we've never seen this before. And here's the interesting part. You're standing up to encourage others, but need encouragement yourself.
goodness.
And I'm not gonna lie to you. I remember, I was pretty good for the most part.
Okay.
But I think it was that first Easter, that first
Oh,
Resurrection Sunday, and to walk in the sanctuary,
Yeah.
and to see no one.
Yeah.
I mean, no one but maybe a
Yeah.
few volunteers to keep the production going. And I had a moment, Doc, and I just sat on the front row,
Oh, yeah.
and I said, God, where are my people?
I-
How long is this going to last?
I was depressed.
Yeah, man.
So much, the week leading up to Resurrection Sunday, this Holy Week, I was moody. I was irritable.
Yeah.
And then to go into Easter Resurrection is like the church's Super Bowl.
That's
right?
it.
So
That's
that's when LeBron and Steph, everybody's
man.
just and
Yeah.
so to walk in and there's nobody.
Nobody, Doc.
Man, I'm sitting there like, how long is this going to happen? I mean,
Yeah.
just depressed. And I remember preaching and being numb at the same time.
Yeah, man.
I
Yeah.
mean, it messed with my psyche so
Yeah.
much. So, and then here was the thing: you couldn't take a Sunday off
No.
because
No.
that during the pandemic as pastors
You're
and
midstream of
oh my God,
a
right,
world crisis.
right.
Nobody's going anywhere.
No. There-
The
yeah.
whole congregation is on the sick and shut-in
It
list.
literally-
So you're
literally.
not going anywhere. You're going to be on your
Wow.
post, and that's why my appreciation of people like you, man. Every time we looked up
Yeah,
on the post,
man.
nobody else shows up
Yeah.
on the post,
Yeah.
man. So
Yeah.
appreciate you, brother.
Man,
Yeah.
likewise.
Yeah. Let me ask you. So that's transition.
Sure.
What about we hear this often? We throw it around. Just want to get your viewpoint on it. Church hurt. Church hurt.
Yeah. It's not only for those in the pew. It's for those in the pulpit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think oftentimes we relegate church hurt, and I'm not lessening how anyone feels, but I don't think as pastors we're vocal enough about some of the hurt that pastors deal with in terms of church. How do you grapple with the fact of someone who's maybe been under your leadership and been in church all their life, and something happens, maybe a misunderstanding, and they walk out without having a conversation? How do you handle someone who has served the church, they pass, and no one shows up to the funeral?
Wow. Yeah.
Church hurt is a delicate emotion, and I think one of the things that if we don't deal with it properly, I think we end up infecting people.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of pastors have experienced church hurt, and we haven't really been vocal about it.
Yeah.
And I think as a consequence, we end up bleeding on people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no one gives the pastor space to sort of say, man, that hurt my feelings. Because we're supposed to be spiritual, supposed to have all of the answers.
Be steadfast.
Right, unmovable.
Unmovable.
Right, always about
Yes,
it, right?
sir.
But
Yes, sir.
there are some Sundays you're like, y'all can have this. Let me wrap my stuff. Let me get my,
Yeah,
okay,
but-
you lock up, right?
Right.
But church hurt is a real emotion. And if that was one word to describe it, I would say very sobering. It makes you question everything, even if it's not directly affiliated with you. If you start looking at why is the place that's supposed to be one of the most loving places, the
Yeah.
place that we know is a hospital where you're
Yeah.
supposed to come in and get nourishment and get healed, becomes, oh man, the boxing match. How can a group of people who love God, who trust God, who hear about the Word of God, who hear about this gracious Jesus, who hear about this loving, become some of the most detrimental and hardest critics?
Yeah,
And so it's challenging.
Yeah.
And I think it's something, if I'm being completely honest, I think it's something to where I've had probably since the pandemic have to sort of own more. So you know what, that bothered me more than I let on.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think sometimes we're not transparent enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, as you were speaking, Pastor, I was thinking of one of my professors at Virginia Union,
Okay.
Dr. Ray McKenzie.
Okay.
And I will never forget. Can't even remember why he shared what he shared.
Okay.
But he said every prophet will experience assassination,
Wow.
even if it's just character assassination.
Wow.
Yeah, every prophet, every preacher, every pastor will experience assassination, even if it's just character
I
assassination.
wish I would have heard that.
Yeah.
I never forget it. And I tell this story. I'm probably my first church. Got called to my first church. I'm 23 years old.
Yeah.
I'm just number one. I'm scared and nervous at the same time. But I'm happy. I'm an associate minister, so I'm preaching every week.
Yeah.
That's a blessing. And
Yeah.
and every
Yeah.
now and then they'll give me a piece of chicken, so it's
Yes,
it's a
sir.
beautiful thing.
Yes, sir.
You know, chicken is the gospel bird.
And a side.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I'll never forget it. Our first church business meeting. I think the subject matters around choir music ministry. At the time, we had maybe 6 or 7 choirs.
Yeah.
And they were sort of arguing within. The choirs were sort of having their own thing. And I made one motion that we merge a couple of the choirs. And I never get one of he's dead and gone now. One of the deacons stood up and said, "We didn't ask you to make decisions.
Wow.
We asked you to preach. That's all you need to be concerned
You said
about."
that was
That's one of the deacons.
One of the deacons.
One of the deacons. I'm 23 years old.
Wow.
First church business meeting. Prior to, I served on the church staff. I've never seen
Doc.
a business meeting like that.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, "Okay, Deke." I sat down, left the church that night, and I remember getting in my car, driving home with tears in my eyes. I pulled up into the driveway. I'll never get it. It was like 8:34.
Wow.
And me and my wife, we had been married maybe 3 years at the time. We didn't have any children. And I remember calling my pastor because I was sobbing that bad, and I didn't want to go in the house and let my wife Mallory see me like that. And I called my pastor. I said, "Pop," and I told him what happened, and I can't stay, and I'm coming home.
Yeah.
He told me this, and I'm just done. I quit. And I never go. My pastor said, "Welcome to the other side of pastoring."
Wow. Wow.
And he said, "Son, this is something that seminary will never prepare you about." That was my first experience with church hurt.
Yeah.
At 23 years old, as a pastor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so I remember it broke me. And I remember probably for the next couple of months, I avoided that deacon.
Yeah.
Didn't have anything really to do with him. And was just preaching broken. And an experience. And so it would come out sometimes in the sermons as maybe jabs. And he pulled me to the side one Sunday and said, "Are we okay?" And I said, "No, we're fine, Deke." He said, No, we can't be okay because you've been avoiding me for months. You haven't really said anything to me." And I told him what happened. And he said, "I didn't think that would bother you."
Wow.
Apologize, but he said, "I didn't think that would really bother you. We asked you to preach. That's what you do." And backstory, the former pastor didn't really come to church meetings, didn't really offer. And so that was their norm.
Mercy. So much is coming to mind right now. But didn't come at all to
Didn't come at all to the church business meeting.
So he was just kind of like an itinerant
Kind of turn
pastor.
every Sunday. Every,
Because you remember. Well, you're from Georgia. I don't know if they had that when you were coming up. Because
Oh, yeah.
but I've heard of stories. I started in my pastor started in Matthews County, Virginia.
Wow.
Small town.
That's rural. Yeah.
Rural. So I'm passing up, horses and cows, and
Oh, wow.
it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. But one of the things I remember is that they had itinerant preachers at certain churches. So although I had my one church, I did hear of churches that only met like maybe twice a month.
First and third, second and fourth.
And then they would share a pastor. but he almost sounds like that. Because those pastors did not really
No.
do what we would call pastoral leadership.
No.
No real counseling, no vision
No,
casting
none
or
at
anything
all.
like that. We just need you to proclaim, Doc.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're saying that was kind of what he was doing.
That was kind of the context, and it messed me up because that didn't come across in the pastoral
Yeah.
in the pastoral that it
Yeah.
never came across, and
Yeah.
so I remember he apologized, but it was almost like, "You really upset about that?" And that's when I understood. That's when it became real for me that there was this misconception between the pulpit and the pew
Yeah.
that my pastor could never, prepare me for.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience. A long story, man, of church hurt, man. It is lingering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lingering.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think that's why one of our professors in school also mentioned about, I think it was the same guy, Dr. McKenzie.
Oh, wow.
Encouraging us, even as preachers, pastors.
Yeah.
At the times, we're all seminarians preparing for such.
Yeah.
And said that we too needed a therapist.
Yeah. Man.
Or something. Sit down
Yeah.
on somebody's couch and just let it out.
Yeah.
Because you will endure.
Yeah.
I guess what they say, the cross.
Yes, sir.
You will endure the cross.
That's the other
Yeah,
side.
man. Speaking of seminary, what comes to mind when you mention seminary? I know that's often sometimes debated. We're not saying cemetery. Doc.
Yeah, right.
We're saying the
Where
seminary.
Mary's preaching, right.
What comes to mind?
Preparation.
Yeah.
Seminary in my it's coming from the South, where majority of the mentors and preachers that I grew up under were not seminary trained.
Yeah.
But I never get my childhood pastor, Pastor Joseph Thompson, who said, "Son, I had to work, but go to school and get your lesson." And I remember that standing out for me.
This your pastor?
It was my pastor
Wow,
saying,
wow.
"Son, go to school and
That's
get
good.
your lesson."
Yes, sir.
And he drove buses.
Wow.
And so at a very early on, he remember. I remember him saying, and even Pastor E. Dewey Smith's dad, Pastor Eddie D. Smith, when I served on staff, he said, "Son, a call to preach is a call to prepare." And so that's what seminary does. It's a process. Seminary does not make you a better preacher. I know several who struggle in the preaching, who are great academics. Seminary prepares you in terms of mentally, spiritually, for some of the things that you're going to encounter.
Yeah.
We don't know who's going to be sitting in the pew.
That's right.
The pew is not ignorant.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we're as trained
Yeah.
and prepared as we can to deliver the gospel.
That's right. And Doc, I have found that, at least my seminary experience,
Sure.
it prepared me. I guess I should say it this way. It worked on me more so as a person
Yeah. Absolutely.
more than a preacher.
Yeah, yeah.
Just finding out
Yeah.
who I was.
Yeah.
And discovering a hermeneutic, a way that God speaks to me and I can speak back to God's people.
Man.
That was palatable to my background, my upbringing,
Yeah.
and where I was theologically. And it was
Yeah.
a joy, man. And to find out that there are others
Who think just,
who, and to find a community, a cohort, this, which is why, man, I envy you now. I know you're trying to get out, but I envy
trying
those
to get out.
moments, with the cohort, which, as you know, becomes family, especially in your
goodness.
doctoral program
Yeah.
at United. And, there's an adage that is shared as well, just, you got to let that process. I remember at United, they said the process, you don't go through the process goes through you.
Oh, yeah.
And just who I am now, Doc. And I think that's what I would want to encourage any preacher that's serious or able, let's just say able.
Yes, yeah.
Because, everyone may not be able to, but if you can, it's not just about the preaching.
No.
It's about the person,
It does. It stretches you in a way theologically. It challenges some of the things that you've been sort of accustomed
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah.
But if the foundation is solid, and most of the times it is, you come back to it. It helps you look at things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
One of my mentors said this about seminary. He says, it's almost as if taking an apple and you're peeling it, and you're turning it, and you're peeling it so that you can look at all sides. That's what seminary has done for me. It has been a stretching place. It's been, like you said, it's been a fraternity, a sorority of great men and women of God that have sort of walked alongside of me. Some of my closest friends I've gotten from seminary, mentors I've gotten from seminary, but ultimately it's helped me become like a thinking board, man. There's some things I thought, I'm like, no, that wouldn't stick. All right, now I can pick up the phone. Let me call Dr. Harris, or let me call Dr. Miller, call Bishop Mack, and sort of think these things through. So it has really stretched me, and it's really made me a better person, like you said, as opposed to a better preacher. Some of us, you have the preaching gift, you have the leadership, but you need some things to sort of give you some substance. To sort of help balance it out.
I heard one guy say, you've got the yearning, now let's get the learning.
One
of those things. So awesome. Love your perspective on that, man. So here's one final one when it comes to word count.
Sure.
And definitely want to hear your perspective on this. So tell me that you're Baptist without telling me that you're Baptist. What comes to mind, man? Tell me that you're Baptist without telling me that you're Baptist.
5-night revivals. Men's Day, Usher's Day, church nurse uniform.
Yeah, man.
Deacons doing devotion.
Yeah, man.
One deacon to pray. One deacon to read the scripture.
Yes, sir. Yes,
One
sir.
deacon to lead the hymn. A charge to keep our hat, but good God to glorify.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah. VBS. Flintstone Pops, red Kool-Aid,
Yeah, man.
repast food, fried chicken, green beans, potato salad,
Yes, sir.
and store-bought cake.
All of that. All of
man.
that. Yeah, it's something. I think there's experiences in every denomination, but of course, what is that old expression? I was born Baptist, I'll die Baptist. Baptist bred, I'll be Baptist when I'm dead. That kind of dynamic.
Oh,
and, and I was discussing actually with Brother Carl here. And we were talking about this months ago. And one of the things I cracked up because I said, let's discuss this. Baptist, what comes to mind? And he starts going, having been led, as we believe, by the Spirit of God. Man, that church covenant, brother,
man.
Which,
That's
be
on the
honest
wall.
with you, it would be on the wall.
Every wall.
Blown up.
Yes, sir.
But it was like, we were talking about this the other day. With one of our preachers here. It was the code of conduct. It made plain how to be certainly a good Christian.
Absolutely.
But how to be a good member of the Lord's church. And, of course, most churches have, gotten away from reading it. But I think we ought to at least take time to review it.
One of my mentors brought this back post-pandemic. And one of the reasons he said he brought it back to the church covenant because he says, we are dealing with a generation that has no concept of Sunday school, no concept of church protocol. And so every first Sunday, which is their communion Sunday, they read the church covenant.
I love it.
Right before they do communion. And I thought about that thing because I grew up, that was the norm for us, right? That's not the norm for this generation.
That's right.
I'm saying that as a millennial who's not, who we still consider ourselves young.
That's right.
But realizing
that
that's
consideration. It is. In fact, we are. We're still young. Don't let them tell you no different up there, man. We're still young,
but we're thinking about a generation who's coming behind us.
That's right.
Who think that YouTube clips and YouTube church is the norm. There was no YouTube when we grew up. There was no.
And I think we got to thank God in certain.
My God, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm glad nobody ain't got the footage.
I know, right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's good, man. But yeah, I think that's a great point. I think when someone would probably label as unchurched.
Sure.
Even though in church, that there's so much to learn. And I was talking to one of our bereaved families recently, and one of the things they brought up which was something I never got to experience, was BTU.
Yeah.
You know, the Baptist Training
Union. Yes,
you know,
sir.
Dad always talks about it,
Oh,
but
my.
how they, you know, basically they would leave the house, you know, before the sun came up.
Yes, sir.
And wouldn't be headed home until the sun was going down. But after service, churches got together and strategically, intentionally trained the next generation. It is to our detriment that, by and large, that kind of dynamic has been taken away from the church.
I was a junior deacon.
Yes, sir.
And
yes,
the
sir.
BTU, man. I mean, helping with, I learned what a missionary was, what a deaconess does. You learn church protocols, when you walk, when you don't walk.
Yeah.
Even how to dress. I mean, what I know now, some of the people in my church call it the costume. When you go preach places, black suit, white shirt,
yes, sir,
black tie. You don't want to be distracted. I learned that in BTU.
Yeah.
My pastor dressed in black, and then when he didn't have a black suit, he had on the robe.
That's right.
There was
That's
no.
right. Yeah.
There was no in between.
Yeah.
And those were some of the things that I think we have gotten away. Well, I know we've gotten away from. But I wonder about this next generation.
Yeah.
Who's going to do the training? Who's going to do? And I know maybe we have to package it differently, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
But the training is what we must do. You know, the word that comes to mind is discipleship.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right. It may have to be packaged differently. The methods must change,
Sure,
of course, but the message still remains the same on how to be a good Christian and how to make an impact, not just on congregation, but community.
Oh, my goodness.
And the thing I remember about the covenant was, you know, it talked about being financially supportive of the church.
Yeah.
But it also talked about how to minister to your family. Make sure your kindred is safe. Make sure mom and them are good. And then even conflict resolution.
Yeah.
You know, to not allow things to fester, to not allow things to get to the point where you're not speaking to one another.
Yeah.
But to fix that thing right away, you know.
And I don't know what version you guys have. Mine even talked about in terms of not overindulging in alcohol. And I remember saying that as I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, we Baptist back.
So I was trying to remember that. I was trying to remember coming up, was that in there? I don't know. But I noticed it, my second pastorate at St. Timothy Missionary Baptist Church. Shout out to them.
Yes,
a few of
sir.
them were here this past Sunday just visiting with us.
Oh, man, that's what's
and,
up.
just grateful for that fellowship
man.
still remains.
Yeah.
But, man, I just remember we would get to that part, man. And you know how the voice starts off so boisterous and loud.
Right.
But, Doc, when we got to that part,
Oh, yeah. The saints
turned to a whisper.
Yeah. The saints commune more than once a month.
Dog, I could barely hear him. I had to look up to see if we were still reading.
Maybe that's what they say. As often as you do it, do it in remembrance of me, Reverend.
Lord have mercy. I know, right? Good stuff, man. So that's definitely telling me you're Baptist without telling me you're Baptist. Yeah, man. One of the joys that we have in our bond, man, is, like I said before, we were already serving, but in the words of my pastor that licensed me, Dr. Donald Jones, he said, God is still calling.
Man,
And we found out that God will call you at the most inconvenient time.
Oh, my God.
And as God called us from one church to another church in the middle of a world crisis. So my thing is this. How was that, answering that call, transitions? Because you were
I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And you had been there how long at that point?
A little over, going on 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been in Milwaukee, pastored 2 congregations.
Yeah.
And my second congregation, great church, nothing wrong. But when the pandemic, and probably prior to the pandemic, probably 2018, 2019, our son was born 2018. And we're a year in, and Milwaukee's a big city. Me and my wife are from Macon, Georgia. I think Macon.
Wife is from Macon as well?
My wife is from Macon.
Oh, gotcha.
And so my dad's side is from Atlanta. Mom's side from Fort Valley. We're living in Macon. Macon's probably 90,000. The city of Macon's probably 90,000 people. We're a fish out of water at 23, going to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that has 2 million people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Culture shock.
Yeah.
Second church, younger church. Church is growing. We went from 1 service to 2 services. Bought a building, renovated the building, got debt free, and church is growing. And 2019, I'm probably in one of the most roughest places of my life. I have this, as Maurice Watson says, this spiritual discontent.
Yeah.
Everything is going great around me, but I'm like, there's got to be something else.
Something else, yeah.
And I'm wrestling because we're 840-something miles away from home, blood family.
Yeah.
And although the church was loving and encouraging, we had a desire to be closer to home. That's 2019. Pandemic pops off.
Yeah.
And I'm watching, as you're watching, press conferences, and the death rate is going from 5,000 to 10,000 to 50,000 to 20,000. I'm depleted, I'm running, and as I'm watching people around me, and I'm going to graveside funerals, family's always been important to me. It becomes even more heightened.
Yes, sir.
And I remember saying, God, if you're going to move me, I don't want to be here away from my family. I didn't know God was going to be like, okay.
Right,
a couple months later.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget it. It was a Sunday morning. I'm getting ready to go preach, middle of a pandemic. And I'm having a good day. The media team, praise team is good. I come home. My wife says, you got a call from Dr. Jamie L. Coates, who pastors the New Era Baptist Church in Middletown, Ohio.
Okay.
I had been preaching for Dr. Coates. He pastored in Macon, Georgia for 9 years. That was my, so I grew up knowing who he was. Had been preaching for him in Middletown, Ohio for about 6, 7 years. He calls me and says, hey, I know you guys have a desire to sort of be closer to home. This church just opened up. The pastor sort of went home to Maryland. I think you'll be a great fit, great church, great people. In fact, my secretary's sister is a member of that church. This is the time when people are not having in-person church. They're doing drive-bys.
That's right.
She was at the drive-by today, and she said, our church is without a pastor. If you know anyone, just please let us know. Tell them to submit their resume. He says, when I figured out what church it was, I was like, Jarvis would be a great fit. As much as I want to be closer to home, I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm telling him I'm good. Inside, I'm like, he does that for like 3 Sundays in a row. The 4th Sunday, my wife says, Jamie's on the phone, and I know what you're going to tell him, but don't tell God how to move. We've been praying about
That's a word right there.
Staying open.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Don't tell God
and
how
when
to
my
move.
wife speaks, because she's so quiet, when she speaks,
Yeah.
I listen. My eyes, and so I remember he said, man, the deadline's coming up. He says, you don't lose anything if you submit your resume.
That's right. That's right.
Submitted my resume. Resume gets on the day of the deadline. That was in September of 2020. I get a call. I'm doing a funeral at my former church. I get a call from Rochelle Jones, who is the co-chair of the pastoral search committee. She says, hi, I'm Rochelle Jones. I'm calling from the search committee. I'm like, okay. You know, she was like, from Macedonia Baptist Church. I'm like, oh, okay. I forgot I had put in for Macedonia. She says, in Dayton, Ohio. And I said, wow.
Yeah.
And she says, our committee would love to sort of do a Zoom with you. I said, okay, great. That was in November. I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. They called back in 2 weeks. It's COVID, so I'm realizing. And they called back and said, okay, we're going to do it a Zoom. I said, okay, when's the Zoom? It's the next day. They called me on Friday. The Zoom's on Saturday.
Gotcha.
I said, all right. So trying to navigate that. Everything that could go wrong in the Zoom interview did. My son was off the chain, interrupted daddy. We lost connection, bad Wi-Fi. They're asking me questions like, why do you think you should be coming to Macedonia to be our next pastor? I said, I don't know if I'm going to be coming to Macedonia.
Right. No, that's
I
real
was
talk.
completely honest.
That's real
They
talk.
wanted me to, you know.
And some people, and I think that's why God has trusted you with the work that you have, because it starts with your heart. Before he puts more in your hand, he must first check your heart.
Oh, wow. That's good, bro.
And my thing is the same, just, those similar questions when it came to First G.
Yeah.
And my response, because of where I was, and most people thought I was going to go from St. Timothy to Glory. You know,
Yes.
in fact, the moderator of our district said, "Oh, Doc, you're all right. You go to Glory from here." And so that was on my mind, to be the longest standing pastor at St. Timothy Missionary Baptist Church. But God is a great interrupter. And I love what your wife says, you know, don't tell God how to move.
Man.
But my response was this to those questions: I don't know.
Yeah.
It's more so I'm really trying to find out. I'm talking to a church that I believe does ministry well.
Yeah.
And we are trying to find out if we should do it together.
Wow.
That was my response.
I remember them asking me, "What's your vision for Macedonia?" And I remember saying, "I don't have one." And one of the people said, "I'm sorry, what'd you say?" He
Yeah.
said, "Pastor, did you want to rephrase that?" I said, "No, I don't have a vision from.
Yeah.
I said, I have a vision for New Direction Church,
That's
where I'm
right.
currently back. I said, I don't know you well enough to have a vision." And I
Talk,
said, "Be
man.
honest." I said, "Anyone who says that they have a vision
Yes.
for a church they're not pastoring
Yes.
yet, have not even been called to,
Yeah.
is blowing smoke."
That's right.
And I remember my wife sort of walking in the background. She was like, "No,
Yeah.
no, flag on the play." I was
Yeah.
like, "What do you want me to do?"
Yeah, yeah, that's
at,
good, man.
At the
That's
end
good.
of the day, I wanted to be where God wanted me to be,
Yeah.
and I felt like I didn't need to help God out.
Come on.
And so that was in November. I didn't hear from him from 30 days. December the 30th, 2020, I was in a car accident in
Wow.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I had went off a bank. It was snowstorm, and it was probably about 9 o'clock that morning. I got a call at noon from Rochelle Jones. I'm thinking, because I had bombed the interview. "Hey, this is Rochelle Jones from Macedonia. Just want to talk to you about your status. We've met with the search committee. I'm thinking we're getting ready to move in the opposite direction. Thank you for your time." She
Yeah.
says, "How soon can you get to Dayton, Ohio to come preach?" Within 2 weeks. I said, "What?" She says, "How soon can you get to Dayton, Ohio and preach?" She says, "We've got the second Sunday, we've got the third Sunday."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I'll take the second Sunday." Preached the second Sunday. Mic went out.
Wow.
If you go back, it's on YouTube now. God,
Oh, it's on YouTube?
I need to delete that. But I wore. I was rushing. Left shoe was blue. Right shoe was black. Pack just rushing. Mic went out while I'm preaching, and somewhere in the experience, I said, the mic went out. I said, "That's okay. I feel at home now." I knew then that's where I was going to be.
Wow.
And so
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
the second candidate preached on the third Sunday. The week of the vote, the other candidate says, "I feel like it's not meant for me to leave right now."
Wow.
They called me that Wednesday. They're voting on that Sunday. And they're saying, "Well, our other candidate decided he's just going to stay where he is."
So it's just the two
It was
of
just
you.
two candidates.
Gotcha.
And so they called me Wednesday. I'm thinking we're going to go back to the drawing board. They're going
Yeah.
to extend it. They said, "We've prayed about it. We want to submit just one name, submit your name to the search, to the congregation." They voted that Sunday. I became the pastor the fifth Sunday in January.
Of what you call it?
20
The Donya.
Of the Donya, yeah, the Donya,
Let me say it right.
yeah. I made that
Yes.
term.
I love it, man. I love it, man. So that's your journey there.
Yeah, it's my journey. Yeah.
And so you got called to Macedonia
January 2020.
January 2021.
Yeah.
I started here November 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. So
When did you get called?
I'm trying to remember.
They,
So I
pandemic
think
years merge.
Pandemic. I've been telling people, man, it's a surreal time
Yeah.
in history.
Yeah.
And I told someone the other day who was so complimentary of what was going on here. And I said, man, pandemic years count for 7 apiece. They count for, so I've actually been here 14 years, Doc. Count for 7 apiece, man.
Right. That's 2 on paper, 14.
You know what I'm saying? But I want to say they may have. I know I resigned September, so I probably got the call, a little bit before that.
Sure.
Maybe August, or I have to look at it. But
Sure.
it was an interesting journey, and but glad we're
And
here.
November 2020 is when you started.
November 2020, man. So pandemic started pretty
In
much
March of 2020.
Yeah.
So you started. There was no vaccine. There's no. Wow.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
So so here it is. So that's why we're here. It's like
Wow. I didn't,
he
wow.
will call you in the most inconvenient time,
Yeah.
and obedience, how it was put to me, was doing what God says to do and
Yeah.
leaving the results up to him.
My goodness. Yeah.
It did not make sense. And
No.
I'll be honest with you, I tried to, they say don't test God, don't put God, but I tried to find every reason to really kind of talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
But he made the pathway so clear and the direction so plain,
My goodness.
where I had no choice but to say yes.
Yeah.
And although I jokingly say it's something that, I would never do again, Doc.
No.
But I'm telling you, it's been, although the most challenging point in place in ministry for me,
Yeah.
because of the predicament
Sure.
that you and I have both been in,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's been rewarding.
It has been. Transitioning by itself has its challenges, but in the
Yeah.
midst of trying to learn people,
Oh my
trying
gosh.
to learn systems,
Yeah.
or trying to put them in place,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was. But one of the things God will always do in the midst of transition, He will confirm
Yes, sir.
that you are exactly where you need to
Talk,
be.
man. Yeah.
And I know without a shadow of a doubt, I am supposed to be at Macedonia. I'm supposed to be in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
And God, I'm like you, God has made every confirmation possible. This
Yes,
is
sir.
where you're supposed to be. And not just for me. He's
Yeah.
done it for my wife,
Yeah.
for my son. We are at a smaller context in terms of city-wise,
Mm-hmm.
but we are probably the most happiest and healthiest we've ever been.
Mm.
And
Wow.
man, I'm so grateful. So
Yeah,
grateful.
man.
Grateful.
And
Very
like I
grateful.
said, man, you're doing a great work.
Oh, man,
and
God be grateful.
man, just doing a great work. And I look forward to, and we've said this off camera,
Sure.
to grow this bond, to grow
Absolutely.
this brotherhood,
Absolutely.
which will also produce fellowship between the churches, man.
Man, absolutely.
Really looking forward to it. So that's that transition, and like we said, this time is filled with swift transition.
Swift transition,
So,
Reverend.
you go from not being able to see your people, but at least you knew them,
Yeah.
to being called to a new context where not only you cannot see them,
Oh, my goodness.
you don't even know them
At all.
at all. And everybody's wearing a mask,
Yeah.
and expecting you to know their name.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
So it was an interesting
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
It has been. And so let me ask you, I just felt that, the pandemic, if you approach it the right way,
Sure.
I feel like you can't go through anything like that, that God allows,
Sure.
and not grow from it.
Oh, my
So there were some things that I saw right away that, this pandemic exposed, when it came to not just one church, but throughout Christendom,
Oh, my goodness.
that we needed to really improve. I think word that comes to mind is media for sure.
Yes.
In many
Yes.
ways. But even reimagining how we do congregational care.
Oh, my goodness.
So many things.
Yeah. There's one word that I think all of us have had to learn how to do, and that word is pivot.
My God. Yeah.
We have, I think before the pandemic, most churches were doing something because that's what they've always done. So we're going to
Yeah.
have church anniversary on the third Sunday and so-and-so.
Yes, sir.
We've always done, we're going to have so-and-so church. We couldn't do that during the pandemic.
No.
The deacons or whoever your congregational care person would actually have to go to the hospital
Mm-hmm.
and go to the nursing home. Now we pick up a phone. We have to embrace Zoom. And so even both my former church, even in my current church, we are not full steam ahead in terms of in-person Bible study
Mm-hmm.
on Wednesday nights. We do a hybrid model
Right now.
right now. And we were.
We might be related. I think we might.
Well, listen, we
might
ain't.
be
Listen, we
related,
ain't
yeah.
and when we start, my church calls me. I use the word. They said pastor's very frugal.
Mm.
I want to make sure we put the resources in the right places, and so
Yeah.
we are on a hybrid model. I don't see us going back to being in person every week.
That's right.
Right now,
That's right.
first and third, we are in person. Second and fourth, we're virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday mornings, we're completely hybrid. There we have to offer, and I think prior to, and even Macedonia did not stream. my predecessor got streaming equipment during the pandemic because they were not set up. They were you go to church.
Yeah,
And that was
yeah.
the context that he inherited.
Gotcha.
And the context that his predecessor inherited. And so, a lot of those churches in Dayton were not high on technology. Now, everybody got a camera.
Everybody.
Everybody's got some kind
Yeah.
of social media kind of presence. And so, but that word pivot, not being tied to a particular program. If it doesn't work, let's try something else. That's my
Yeah.
motto at Macedonia.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
this doesn't work, we'll try something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, it came with obstacles.
Sure.
But at the same time, it has ushered in new opportunities.
Yes.
And, here at the church, and you see it around, we have reimagined.
I
So
love
it's reimagined First G, reimagining this ministry, understanding you can't, even if you wanted to, you really shouldn't pour new wine into old wineskins.
No.
We don't want to waste good wine, Doc.
No.
Don't waste the wine. Don't waste this season of opportunity.
goodness.
And so we pivoted. Yeah, and I've always believed. You let me know how you feel,
Sure,
but I
sure.
always believe that any institution that is worth its salt,
Sure.
that is really going to make an impact not only internally but externally,
Mm-hmm.
must always remain flexible.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think the pandemic exposed that we were just doing some things just to be doing them.
Yeah.
And even some churches, and I remember when the pandemic first started, everybody was valuing the church.
Mm-hmm.
I even had members of my former and say, Pastor, I've never appreciated the church, and when the church opens back up,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the first one. I mean, and for the first couple of months, everyone had an audience.
Yeah.
And as the pandemic went on, it waned, and people just wanted to go back. I want to go back to how things were, and we had to learn how to embrace this new normal. And Isaiah talks about that. He talks about, behold, I'm going to do a new thing, and old things are passed
Yes,
away.
sir. Yes, sir.
And I think too many times we fall so in love with our past that we end up making that our deity. That becomes our God.
It's idolatry.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And we are missing the new things that God is doing because we're so in love with the past.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the past. I think the past is a grateful point of reference, but I think we're in dangerous territory when we go through the pandemic and we go back to church as usual.
Yeah.
We can't.
And I think what it is as well is we've got to own it. I think sometimes the present can be so challenging.
Oh,
and
my God, yeah.
The future can be so uncertain
Yeah.
that in many ways we will end up romanticizing the past.
Absolutely.
Moses is in this movement and there comes a bump in the road, barriers along the way.
Yep.
And all of a sudden those who have been freed are like, hey, we might as well go back to Egypt. At least we had a square meal. We knew when it was coming. We were conditioned in that
3
way.
meals in the cot. Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So I think sometimes because of the challenges that come with moving forward, I think sometimes we can romanticize something that, really should have been improved upon anyway. Pandemic or no pandemic.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. There were some things that I became guilty of. I was doing it because it was on the calendar. We want to fill the calendar. And I remember saying in my former context, and probably my first church, busy church is a growing church. But we were just busy, just be busy.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, why we have something every month? The people are tired. We're complaining about going there, but it's because it's something that we've always done.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do at this stage in my ministry, the stage of leading and pastoring people, I want to be impactful. I don't want to be busy.
Talk, man.
I want to be impactful. And I want the church to be impactful.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think the pandemic exposed is that we were high church but low in the community. And so we invade the community in which our churches are, our campus
That's
is.
good. That's good.
And no one knows us except for on Sunday morning. And they don't know us. They just know our cars. They know us.
Yeah.
We may speak. We may
Yeah.
not speak.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the pandemic exposed is that the church has to have her hand in both.
Absolutely.
In sanctuary, but also in community.
That's it,
and probably
man.
even more so because
Yeah.
the church is the community.
That's
We're a
right.
living organism.
Yeah.
But we stay stuck within the walls.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, and you're right. You hit on it. That we prided ourselves on filling the calendar,
Oh my goodness.
carrying on those traditions, those
Sure.
annual days, which is nothing wrong
Right,
with it.
right.
But it's kind of like at certain points along the journey, you're kind of like that fig tree moment.
Yep.
Is it producing fruit?
Man.
And then I think for me, it's just realizing there are some things that we should have, I think cross Christendom,
Sure.
we could do things differently.
Yeah.
Not necessarily stopping them, but let's do it differently.
Absolutely.
And to your point, you're talking about, okay, if we're not churching all the time, then that means we have an opportunity to reach the community.
Oh my goodness.
But before we even do that, we need to minister at home.
Oh my goodness.
So home and community, I
Oh my
feel,
goodness.
was really brought more to the forefront of our minds when it comes to the ministry. We realize it's good to be at home. In fact, at home, you have a better opportunity for all of your family to be there for this good Bible study.
Oh my
That
goodness.
Pastor Ellis is teaching.
No, man, yeah, and you're absolutely right. Even prior to pandemic, going to Bible study,
Yeah.
going to revivals and stuff, and it wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy in terms of for family.
Yeah.
If we're promoting that we want the church to be a healthy family,
Yeah.
we have pastors dragging their family to revival.
Yeah.
Revival starting at 7 o'clock to 9-ish, 9:30. There's no
On a school
engagement
night.
on a school night. There's no engagement with your spouse. There's no engagement with the family. The kids are asleep. Whoever's got a lockup spot 10 o'clock, and then you got to do it all over again.
Yeah.
Where is the balance in that?
Balance,
And
yeah.
one of the things that the pandemic exposed is that we need to spend more time with the family, being the church rather than
right.
just having the church.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I love it. I love it. So one of the things I wanted to lift up is,
Sure.
as we talked about that, God used the pandemic.
Yes.
He allowed it.
Yes.
And so what are some things that you would say in your ministry, your church,
Sure.
that you all are doing better coming out of the pandemic
Sure.
than you were doing coming in?
I think, and I came in, Dr. Darrell Griffin, who's this great pastor, has his book that says "Showing Up in the Middle of the Scene."
Good.
And so I showed up, as me and you both did, in the midst of a pandemic. So I'm still learning Macedonia and its culture. We're still. I give this sort of the imagery that we're still learning each other. We're still stepping on each other's toes, still scuffing
yeah.
the floor, but we're
Yeah.
learning how to sort of jive with each other.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think Macedonia is doing better is ministering to the community, but most importantly, being a community to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every church I've pastored, we've had no physical family in that city that we've been in, and so our church has become our family.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that we're better in terms of a community, of a village. We're sort of reimagining what that looks like. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
not just deacon so and so or deaconess so and so or staff person. This is brother. This is adopted auntie. Another thing that I really believe we're doing is ministering to the total person. So Macedonia is a multi-generational church. There's on any given Sunday we can have 5 to 6 generations sitting in church together.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we're intentional about doing is meeting the needs of ministering to every generation. I think before we maybe hit 1, maybe hit 2,
Yeah.
whoever the majority was, to be honest.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so now we're intentional about being an intergenerational church.
That's good. That's good,
So
man.
making sure that it's not a young church, it's not an old people's church,
Yeah.
it's just a church.
That's right. That's right.
And I think there's something that I think the church can learn from a Walmart.
Yeah.
Or as my wife say, a Target or a Target, right?
Yeah.
They've got in any Walmart, any Target, you've got something for men, you got the women's department, you got the health department. And I think that if the church is going to continue to be the church that God is calling her to be, we've got to be able to minister some of these things. I mean, you talked about it off camera, mental health.
Absolutely.
And youth engagement.
Yeah.
And we've got to be able to sort of speak to some of the things that are plaguing the church that we don't talk about.
Absolutely. So, you know, you're really talking about a paradigm that I've really tried to build at every assignment that I've had.
Sure.
Is, you know, ministries for all ages and stages.
Yeah.
And, you know, and most recently, I've been reminded one of my greatest joys in Cleveland was really building a ministry for special needs individuals.
Wow.
So that's often a population that they're there, but they're kind of overlooked. We kind of put them off to the side or in the corner. But I think that is also an opportunity. And I'm saying that because I'm hoping that other churches will watch this.
That's amazing.
And hear you and I.
Wow.
But I know that there are many families that stay away from the church because they have a special needs individual.
Wow.
That they don't want to be looked at in a unkind way.
Sure.
Or to be at a situation where they're not even being engaged at all. So, you know, along with what you're saying, mental health, being multi-generational, congregational care, all of these things, you know, my thing is, I know for me personally, I wanted to come out of the pandemic a whole lot closer to God and his will for my life than how I started.
Sure.
You know, so that's awesome, man. Let me ask you, this is like, you know, we're in the church, but we have told them that this is going to be like the pastor study. They don't get to hear this.
Okay.
You know,
here we go.
So let me ask you this, and it's off the record, but it's on the record.
All right.
So here it is. What is your greatest, the thing you love the most about pastoring? And also just share with us, Doc. Be transparent. It's all right. We got you covered. What's your pet peeve?
Oh my goodness! How much time you got?
When it comes to pastoring,
y'all sure y'all want this? You have to edit this,
yes,
man, because it might have some explicatives.
This is Ellis unscripted. Let's do it.
You know what? I'm a people person, man. I am I'm an intro extrovert.
I hear you.
So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I love people.
Yeah.
Man. So probably my favorite part about pastoring is the relationships. Getting to know the people, doing life with people.
Yeah.
One of my pet peeves, I've got probably several about pastoring, is the unrealistic expectation of what the pastor is. If as loving as my church is, and I think most of our churches, everyone has a different definition of what the pastor's role is. Yeah. For some, the pastor is supposed to preach, teach, feed the flock.
Yeah.
But for some, they want the pastor to be at every beckoning call. So if I bump my toe, I want Reverend to be there.
You got to be there.
You got to be there to pray.
Don't send nobody else.
If the goldfish die, they want you to go and they want you to, and to bury the goldfish and that. So I would probably say the unrealistic expectation of what the pastor is. And then I think also one of the things that I'm maneuvering through, and I think probably the biggest, is that there's so many obstacles and barriers to just doing the work.
Yeah.
And I think we don't talk about that a lot. I think people talk about the politics in the pew, but sometimes there are so many barriers in which pastors have to jump through to really meet the needs of the people.
Yeah.
And so I would say those are probably.
And I would say especially when you're new.
Yes.
And you don't know all of the who's who, what's what.
Yeah.
The systems. And I love what you brought up earlier. Not just the systems that are there, but what are the systems that are going to be needed and necessary to move the church forward.
Yeah. The grace, and I think also sometimes the grace to make mistakes. I think
that's good.
I think most people think that the pastor has it all figured out, and we're going back to sort of that seminary question. Probably the more degrees you have, you're an expert on church. You're an expert on how things are supposed to go. And if it goes wrong, it's the pastor's fault.
Yeah.
And if it goes well, we did that. Instead, and so, I think that plays a major role into it. But I think oftentimes The grace to figure things out. I mean, me and you are both navigating new contexts. We're not new to pastoring, and it's so funny because the pandemic ages you, and whenever I meet another clergy person or whenever I meet someone in the community, and I tell them, hey, they say, oh, you're the pastor at Macedonia. They say, oh, okay, well, we're praying. They treat you as if you just arrived as the new pastor. I was like, I've been doing this before.
Right.
This is not my first assignment. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But every day is the first day.
Yeah, this is
it's Groundhog Day. Yeah.
New chapter, not a new book. We've been on the road for a while.
For a while.
No, I love it. And that's something I really want to spend some time there.
Yeah.
Because we all need grace.
Oh my goodness.
We all need room.
Yeah.
To experience the limits.
Sure.
The faults, the failures, the fallacies of humanity.
Oh my goodness.
And to grow from it.
Yeah.
I will never forget, and growth comes with time. I will never forget when I first was a candidate at St. Timothy Missionary Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Their issue was not my preaching. Their issue was not my teaching.
Okay.
Their issue was my age. And I will never forget the lady in the parking lot. She was like, Rev, we were blessed by you, but you're just so young. And I said, ma'am, don't worry about that. If you call me, I promise you I'll get older. I promise you I'll get older. But that's a natural sense. But in a spiritual sense, I think we need to realize that each church who may be watching us, that although your pastor has been called to shepherd you and to aid you and to develop you even as a disciple, at the same time, those things are happening within him as well.
Absolutely. Giving the pastor, I am not the same 23-year-old I was when I first started pastoring.
Yeah.
Every context I've been in, and you probably very similar, I've been the youngest minister in the on the roster.
Yeah, man.
I just happen to be the pastor. I've been the youngest minister on the roster.
Yes, sir.
And so my first context, my first assignment, they were patient with me. Even that story about the deacon and that kind of stuff and just dealing with that. I'm so grateful for those experiences because it made me who I am. They gave me the grace to grow, to be 23. And they let me be me. I am, I'm an apologetic. I'm a hip hop head. I'm a sneaker head, and so, they allowed me to sort of be me.
Yeah.
And that's probably my word of advice. That's my prayer as our congregations are changing, developing. The pulpit is getting younger.
Yeah.
And not to be so honed in on what the pastor has to look like and what they have to do, and really go back to Jeremiah that God still gives pastors according to his heart.
Yeah.
And the pulpit search committee is flawed. I don't care how brilliant they are, how loving they are, and most of them are.
Yes, absolutely.
God still calls pastors.
Yeah, it's the providence of God.
Oh my goodness.
Providence of God, especially, I was telling, I forget who I was talking to. I believe it was someone in the church. Actually, it was for my anniversary I shared this.
Okay.
I just felt, and you're in this as well.
Okay.
Those that were called to pastor during this time, during the pandemic season. I mean, out of all the pastors that have served at Macedonia, after all the pastors that have served at First G or any other church, this generation was hand-selected for such a time as this to help navigate the Lord's church, his flock, through one of the most turbulent and unprecedented times in human history.
Yeah.
To have, when they have a question, is there a word from the Lord? To,
oh my goodness.
To be on your post and share with us, saith the Lord.
Man.
And to be strong enough to be vulnerable to the will of God.
My goodness.
When you were in a comfortable space.
Very comfortable.
Be called out of the boat, so to speak.
And thrive.
And thrive.
What you have done, what God has done through you, but what you have done. And I think oftentimes, and we're humble. We're humble. Saints, we are humble. We ain't feeling ourselves. But I'm a firm believer of giving credit to what credit is due. The way God has gifted you, the things that God has done and that God is doing in First G in the midst. I mean, you just celebrated 2 years of leading God's people here at First G.
Yeah.
Amazing job. But you came in working. There was no. One of the things that we had in our former context that we did not have in the pandemic, and that's the honeymoon stage.
Oh, man.
We didn't get, there was no grace to figure it out. There was no grace to, well, we're just going to let the pastor just figure and coast for the year.
No.
We can love on the people. First of all, we don't even know who the people are. Who are the people, right? And what you have done, when I walked in here today and saw the grace of God, the favor of God, not just on your life, but on the life of this church, the renovations, how you're meeting the needs of where people are here in this city, and not just maintain, you're growing. You're growing. God is adding to the church post-pandemic, online, in person, navigating, and not just the Sunday morning stuff, but the other things that First G is doing outside of Sunday morning, that needs to be celebrated because oftentimes we clap for everyone else, but the church gets silent and we won't celebrate our own. And so, brother, I salute you because God is doing some great things, and I'm excited about that. But this generation. And I say generation not in terms of age, but just in terms of season during the pandemic.
My God.
We're having to figure it out and figure out how to grow differently.
Doc, I'm considering things, especially in this season, that Dad didn't have to even consider.
My God.
You know, and, so that's why I'm saying I am more appreciative of especially someone like yourself who's doing the work, that is serious about the Savior, and is feeling all that the people are feeling, but somehow you muster enough strength to keep them encouraged, keep them engaged and moving forward. So, man, I'm with you, man. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. That's one of those things you could take no credit for.
No, man, it's a God
but all
thing.
glory belongs to Him. Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
And we'll close with this. Is, with all that we've said, with all that we've experienced, relevant question is, Doc, where do we really go from here as far as the church? Where do you see the church going from this point?
I think the church has to, in one way, get back to the basics in terms of being able to be more about family and be more about community. But I think the church has to be willing to go back into the highways and byways, into the hedges, and compel them to come.
Yes, sir.
That's going to look different. What grew churches before the pandemic is not going to grow your church now. People have heard great preaching. Everybody's been online. We've heard great preaching. We've seen snippets. People are excited about the relationship. And so I think the church has to become more relational.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think how we grow large is by going smaller. And so I think our brothers and sisters of different persuasion they've done it with small groups. I think we're going to see that now. And even when we look at Acts 2, the Bible says, and they went from house to house. And so I think the church has to get back to being more relational. I think we have to be more community focused. I think we have to be more family focused. But going back to your point, man, I really believe we've got to be a ministry for all ages. I think that's how the church progresses.
Absolutely.
And I don't have it figured out.
Yeah, man.
At all. They're gonna write books on us.
You gonna write it? No, you gonna write it, Doc.
When I finish this dissertation, I'm done. I wanna read.
Yeah, I don't blame you, Doc. I don't blame you. But that's one of the things, though, in all seriousness, that there have been pandemics before. But unfortunately, there was no literature for us to read and to be inspired and informed by. So I'm hoping that one of our colleagues in the pandemic will be so inspired and willing to jot this stuff down. But what we have been through has been the Lord's doing. And man, I just admire you so much.
No, likewise,
and
bro.
Appreciate you. Looking forward to getting to know you and your family more. I'm supposed to be with you all.
You are coming the 4th weekend in June. First G, don't let your pastor come by himself. The 4th Sunday in June, we're going to work you like a Hebrew slave, as good friends do. So you're going to be training our leaders. And one of the things that you've done at First G, I would love for you to share that in terms of reimagining what ministry looks like.
Yeah.
Because this is not just new for me and you. This is new for our ministry leaders.
Yeah.
And we're inheriting ministry leaders. We're gaining new ministry leaders.
Absolutely.
And so that word reimagine is going to be great. So you're going to be training our leaders the 24th of June.
Good.
Our
Looking
staff.
forward to it.
And then on that Sunday.
Sunday's coming.
Yeah, Sunday's coming.
Yeah.
You'll be preaching at 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock.
Amen.
And I'm going to find another service for you to preach at. But we're excited, man, about you being with us. But about the fellowship, man.
Yeah,
We
man.
really are. So,
Really
the
looking
fourth
forward to
weekend, June, you'll be with us in Dayton, Ohio.
Amen. Count me in.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it. And we look forward to having you down here in Louisville. We're going to get a good bite to eat before you go back to Dayton, even on tonight. But, man, I appreciate the fellowship. And here's one thing. God just placed this in my spirit. So we're talking about reimagining. We're talking about where do we go from here. So change is inevitable.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, one of the very environments or experiences that people could count on not changing was the church. So as we close tonight, I really want you, if you could say a word, I'm not going to say a word of eulogy. I almost say a word of eulogy, but no, a word of encouragement to the times, because he says, forgetting those things which are behind, reaching for those things which are before. Paul says, I press, and that word press is not to be romanticized. That pressing is difficult. As I said before, growing, but it's grueling. How do you encourage those that have loved the church, have been dedicated to the church, are willing to be a part of its future, but at times, because of the swift transitions that we keep bringing up, because of the challenges, how do you keep them encouraged? I will never forget A. Charles Bowie. He's gone to glory. He said,
Cleveland.
Yeah, you remember A. Charles?
Wow.
Brother, we got to talk about A. Charles Bowie,
man.
I used to
A
just go
legend.
to his office
Oh,
and
my
just
God.
sit there. I called it shepherd's talk, and I wasn't talking. I was just listening.
Wow.
But
East Cleveland. Yes,
sir. East
Wow.
Mount Zion
Yeah.
Baptist Church. Right now, Dr. Brian Karn is the pastor there.
Yeah.
But, man, he said, Joshua, everyone must cross Jordan. He said some will come kicking and screaming. Some will come willingly or reluctantly. But everybody must cross Jordan. How do you keep them encouraged, Pastor?
I think one of the things that I want to encourage every person, whether you're a pastor, whether you're on staff, whether you're an usher ministry leader, maybe you're a deacon, maybe you sing in the ministry, is don't forget what the church has done for you. I think oftentimes we make it about other people. But don't let people, systems, politics, the isms of the church keep you away from a real Christ. That's number one. And then number two, as you deal with this crossing the river, I think one of the things that you have to make sure is that you're spiritually ready. The church has to become a place to where you go to get fed, to where you go to get encouraged, but ultimately it has to become a place to where you're also doing the pouring. You're also doing the leading. You're also doing the investing. And so I want to encourage you to work with other ministries, work with other disciples to come together. I think oftentimes we find so many differences and things that divide us that we miss the things that are uniting us. And so if you're at your church, if you're part of this ministry, remember why God led you there. You didn't join on your own. God ordered your steps.
Yes, sir.
And so even if you're new into the ministry, even if you've been a member for 40 and 50 years and you feel like it's my time to move off the scene, it's my time to pass it to, I'm tired, I'll give it to someone else. I want you to remember this, there's no retirement in the kingdom.
My God.
There's nowhere in the Bible does it say that there's retirement in the kingdom. He's going to say, well done, thy good and faithful servant. There's no such thing as a deacon emeritus in the Bible. Now, there are some things in which our roles change, right? But you don't quit. You can't quit what God has started. And so whether you're 18, 28, 38, 68, 88, know that you have something to give. And so I think oftentimes if you're a senior, if your steps have grown short, you think that, you don't have anything to contribute. but you have your wisdom.
That's
so even
good.
if you don't have your energy, you've got the wisdom. We
Yes,
need
sir.
your energy. For those of you who may be a little bit younger, you have the energy, but we need wisdom. So we'll know the way in which to go.
Yes, sir.
So don't quit. Remember that God called you to that particular ministry, and to run until you can't run anymore, and to leave it better than you left. You found it. Yeah.
Doc, that's the
No, man, no.
That's the drop the mic moment.
No.
The doors
Leave
of
it.
the church are
No,
open.
no, sir. No, sir.
We about
No,
to
sir.
pass this plate real
No,
quick.
sir. No, sir.
We about to go get a plate.
We gonna
about to
get it. Yeah,
eat.
let's go get it.
My man, 100 grand.
Oh,
I
bro.
appreciate you, man.
Thank you, bro.
That was good, man.
Thank you, man. Thank
Look,
you for
man,
having me.
share this broadcast with someone. Look, we're excited about this podcast and how
Yeah.
we're ministering in a different way, but in an effective way. We want to thank God once again for Pastor Ellis for
Thank you for
sharing
having
with
me,
us.
bro. Thank y'all.
This won't be the last time, brother. But as always, love God, love people, period.
Make a preacher wanna preach. Make a singer wanna sing. Make a deacon wanna pray. Do it all in Jesus' name. Make a preacher wanna preach. Make a singer wanna sing. Make a deacon wanna pray. Do it all in Jesus' name. Make a preacher wanna preach.